Rather read the best 100 books over and over again until I absorb them, rather than read all the books.
Let me ask you something. How many books on productivity have you read so far? How many books will you need to read before you actually become productive? And lastly, why hasn't any book that you've read completely solved your problem? I like to read. I like to read books, non-fiction books, fiction books, books that make me happy, and of course books that make me angry because the author refuses to write anymore. George R. R. Martin, I'm looking at you, buddy. You need to get writing. Reading is simply amazing. Endless variations, varieties, and stories to keep us interested forever, hooked on forever. But that's the problem. We don't have forever. Here's my problem with non-fiction books. Whenever I want to try and learn something, I type in, 100 best books on productivity. The thing is, every single book promises you to teach you something new, something better. And every single time you fall into the trap of thinking, hey, this new book, as soon as I read this book, I'm going to become productive, or I'm going to become X as soon as I finish the next book. The thing is, you don't have time to read everything. So what do? Well, here's the short answer. You don't need to read every single book. You just need to read the 100 best books over and over and over again. I think the problem is because we read more but reflect less. If you stick around, I can tell you what the long answer is. It's split into 3 parts and it's called the Trinity of Reading. Let me explain. Finding the best books, reflecting on the best ideas, and finally taking action on these ideas. How do we find the best books? To do this, I need to introduce you to every YouTube productivity guru's best friend, and it's called the Pareto's Principle. When applied to books, states that 80% of everything we need to know about a particular field, let's say productivity, can be learned by reading 20% of all the books in the productivity field. This means that if we are able to find the top 20% of books that gives us 80% of everything we need to know about productivity, it's going to save us a lot of time. Here's an interesting hack that I use to find really good books. I use people. And what I mean by that is I find people that I like and I hijack their reading list. To find the best 20% of books, you still need to sift through all the useless books. But if you find a reading list, all of these people have done the hard work for you, and all you need to do is get the book and then skim read it. Skimming is literally like one of those buzzwords that everyone uses, but I wanted to break down exactly what this means. Funnily enough, someone's actually written a book about how to read a book, and they call skimming inspectional reading, which consists of 6 things. So follow this checklist as soon as you get a book: reading the title and the preface, looking at the table of contents, checking the index, reading the blurb, looking at the main chapters, and lastly, skim reading the book here and there. So a paragraph here, a paragraph in a different chapter. And this should give you an idea of whether the book is actually going to deliver on what it's supposed to give you. Step number 2, reflecting on the best ideas. Once you've picked the book that you want to read, commit to it. And by that I mean, when you read it, go through a process of actively thinking through the book. Now, there are some ways to help with this. The first way is to do marginalia. That's basically a fancy word for saying you should write in the margins, you should try to highlight, you should underline, and you should try and scribble down your thoughts as you go through the book. I'm a big fan of this, and so is this guy, Bill Gates. He uses this prolifically. He underlines, he says that he can't even finish a book unless he agrees with the author by writing his thoughts in the margins. Similar to him, I see reading as a discussion with the author. I ask myself, do I agree with what the author is saying? What's the author trying to tell me? And lastly, whether any of this is applicable to my life. And if so, how can I use it? The second tip is for people who use e-readers like iBooks or Kindle. There is an app called Readwise, which is extraordinarily good at helping you understand and recall the things that you've read before. The way Readwise works is that it takes a highlight or an underlining or a note that you've made on your online book, it syncs it to their app and makes really good flashcards and daily email reminders which are emailed to you directly, and all you need to do is just flip through these flashcards and remind yourself of the key thoughts that you've extracted. Once you've sifted through the book and figured out the 20% of the actual book that's going to give you 80% of the outcome, you have to figure out how you can take these life-changing ideas to actually change your life. Here's how I do it. I take, and this is really important, take one concept, one idea, one thought, okay? Nothing more, just one thing. Anything more and you're exponentially at risk of not following through and taking action on this idea that you've come up with. For example, there's an absolute banger of a book called Getting Things Done by David Allen. And one of the rules and concepts that I use from that book is called the 2-minute rule, where basically he says, if a task that you get can be done within 2 minutes, then do it right then and there. Don't leave it till later. But if it's more than 2 minutes, then schedule a future time to do it and then do it then. Here's how I would make that actually actionable. I would take that, condense it into like a quote, move it to my Notion journal, into a section called improvements. I see this journal 1 to 2 times a day, and I always check the improvement section. I try and action this item every single day until it becomes a habit. Using this technique of finding the best books, reflecting on the best ideas and taking action on one idea at a time has completely changed my life. Unless there is something so groundbreakingly new or some new research about productivity, I don't even bother reading them. I'll link 3 books in the description below, which I think if you read them and you reread them over and over again, you have gained 80% of what it means to be productive and how to become a productive person. Or another great rule that I've learned about life is to hit that like button for the algorithm, because it's very, very important. How about that rule? That's a great rule, I promise. That's why you don't need to read every single book that's been published on productivity. You just need to find the top 3 or top 5 books and reread them until those key concepts sink in. At the end of it, you'll be much more closer to being a productive person than you would be if you read 50, 60, 70 books without having actually reflected on them or having acted on them. I really hope you enjoyed that video. If you have, you probably enjoy the other videos I've made, like what I get up to in medical school. I'll link it on like the top right corner. Till next time, see you later. Bye.